First impressions, the sleek black Tesla pulled up to the Ocean View Resort with a satisfying purr, its pristine paint job reflecting the morning sun like liquid obsidian. Maya Chen stepped out, her designer heels clicking against the cobblestone driveway as she surveyed her temporary prison with barely concealed disdain. The resort was undeniably beautiful, sprawling terraces carved into cliffsides, infinity pools that seemed to spill into the Pacific, an architecture that whispered of understated luxury. But Maya saw it all through the lens of obligation rather than opportunity. 3 months, she muttered under her breath, adjusting her Chanel sunglasses. 3 months of playing pretend before I can get back to real life. The internship program at Ocean View Resort was supposedly prestigious, drawing candidates from top business schools worldwide. For Maya, however, it was simply another checkbox on her carefully curated path to inheriting her father's tech empire. David Chen had built his fortune on revolutionary cloud computing solutions, and Maya had grown up assuming the corporate throne would simply be hers when the time came. This resort internship was his latest attempt to build her character, a phrase that made her skin crawl. She dragged her Louis Vuitton luggage toward the staff entrance, as instructed in her orientation packet. The irony wasn't lost on her that someone worth hundreds of millions was being forced to use the service door. As she struggled with the heavy glass panel, a weathered hand appeared beside her, gently pushing it open. "Thank you," she said curtly, not bothering to look at her helper as she swept past. The staff orientation room buzzed with nervous energy. 20-something interns from various backgrounds filled mismatched chairs, their faces bright with ambition and anxiety. Maya chose a seat in the back corner, already mentally drafting the Instagram posts she'd craft to make this experience seem more glamorous than it actually was. "Welcome to Ocean View Resort," announced a stern woman with silver hair and impeccable posture. "I'm Victoria Blackwood, your general manager. For the next 12 weeks, you'll rotate through every department: housekeeping, food service, guest relations, maintenance, and administration. This isn't summer camp. You'll work real jobs, handle real responsibilities, and be held to the same standards as our permanent staff." Maya's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her thigh. She'd already decided which departments she'd breeze through and which she'd delegate to more eager interns. Her father's influence had gotten her this far. Surely it would carry her through 3 months of manual labor after orientation. The interns were given their housing assignments in the staff quarters, a cluster of modest cabins tucked behind the main resort buildings. Maya's cabin was spartanly furnished but clean, with a small kitchenette and a view of the employee parking lot rather than the ocean. She unpacked her designer wardrobe into the tiny closet, already planning how she'd spend most of her free time at the resort's guest amenities rather than in this cramped space. Her first assignment was housekeeping, starting the next morning at 6 a.m. The very thought made her stomach turn. She'd never cleaned anything in her life. Her family's Manhattan penthouse employed a full staff, and her Stanford dorm had been serviced daily. How hard could making beds and emptying trash cans really be? That evening, she ventured to the staff cafeteria for dinner, hoping to find some kindred spirits among the other interns. The space was functional, but uninspiring: fluorescent lighting, institutional furniture, and the lingering smell of industrial cleaning products. She grabbed a tray and surveyed the options with the same enthusiasm she might reserve for a root canal as she picked at her salad. Maya observed the other staff members with anthropological detachment. The housekeepers looked exhausted there, uniforms wrinkled from long shifts. The kitchen staff moved with practiced efficiency, but little joy. Everyone seemed so ordinary, so resigned to their small lives and smaller paychecks. She couldn't help but think about the contrast with her usual dining experiences: Michelin-starred restaurants, private dining rooms, meals that cost more than these people probably made in a week. This whole experience felt like an elaborate form of punishment, designed to humble her in ways she neither needed nor appreciated. Tomorrow would bring her first real day of work, and Maya Chen was determined to survive it with her dignity and manicure intact. Unexpected encounters. Maya's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. Sound so foreign to her pampered existence that she initially mistook it for a fire drill. She fumbled for her phone, squinting at the harsh blue light before reality crashed over her like a cold wave. Housekeeping duty started in 30 minutes, by 6:15. Now she stood in the housekeeping office wearing the standard issue uniform that made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The polyester blend felt scratchy against her skin, accustomed as it was to silk and cashmere. Sophia Delacroix, the head housekeeper, looked her up and down with the practiced eye of someone who had seen countless interns come and go. "You'll be working with Maria today," Sophia said in her crisp French accent, her silver hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. "She'll show you the basics. Listen carefully, guests. Pay premium rates and expect perfection." Maria, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and calloused hands, smiled warmly at Maya. "Don't worry, Sherry. Everyone starts somewhere. Take care of the Ocean View Suites to date 12 rooms, very important guests." As they loaded their cleaning cart, Maya watched Maria's efficient movements with growing dismay. The cart itself was heavy, laden with towels, cleaning supplies, and mysterious tools whose purposes she couldn't begin to guess. Her designer sneakers, chosen more for aesthetics than function, already pinched her feet. "The key is system," Maria explained as they entered the first suite. "Bathroom first, then bedroom, living area last. Always check for personal items before. Vacuuming guests lose jewelry in strange places." Maya nodded absently, more focused on avoiding touching anything that looked particularly unsanitary. The suite was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, marble bathroom, with a soaking tub, furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars. She felt a pang of resentment that she was here to clean it rather than enjoy it. "I'll take the bathroom," she announced, figuring it would be quicker than making beds. 20 minutes later, Maria found her standing helplessly in front of the marble shower, spray bottle in one hand, squeegee in the other, both unused. Water spots decorated every surface like abstract art, and the provided towels lay in a soggy heap on the floor. "Perhaps we try together," Maria suggested diplomatically, demonstrating the proper technique with patient grace. Maya watched, mortified, as the older woman efficiently restored the bathroom to pristine condition in minutes. By lunch break, Maya's feet throbbed, her back ached, and her perfectly styled hair had wilted in the humid ocean air. She collapsed into a chair in the staff cafeteria, too exhausted to care about the suspicious stains on the table's surface. "Rough morning?" asked James Park, a fellow intern who'd been assigned to the restaurant. His uniform was splattered with what looked like hollandaise sauce, but he seemed cheerfully unbothered. "This is insane," Maya muttered, picking at her sandwich. "I have 2 degrees from Stanford. I shouldn't be scrubbing toilets." "It's actually kind of interesting," James replied. "You learn how everything works from the ground up? Like, did you?" "No, they have a whole system for tracking guest preferences. Mrs. Richardson in Suite 12 only uses hypoallergenic laundry detergent. Mr. Yamamoto needs extra pillows because of his back surgery." Maya stared at him as if he'd spoken in tongues. "You memorized guest preferences?" Sophia says attention. "To detail is what separates good service from great service." She's worked here 15 years, started as a room attendant, and worked her way up. The afternoon brought new challenges. A guest complaint about slow room service meant Maya had to learn the intricate process of coordinating between housekeeping and food service. She found herself running between departments, her designer sneakers slipping on the polished floors, trying to decode the complex logistics that made the resort function seamlessly. It was during one of these frantic trips that she encountered him, a quiet man in maintenance coveralls pushing a cart of cleaning supplies. He looked to be in his 50s, with silver-threaded brown hair and hands that spoke of decades of manual labor. He was moving slowly, methodically, in a way that reminded Maya of her elderly doorman back home. "Excuse me," she said impatiently, tapping her foot as he cleaned windows along the corridor. "Some of us are actually trying to work here." The man looked up, his dark eyes unreadable. "Of course, my apologies." He stepped aside, but something in his measured response irritated her further. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the accumulated frustration of her morning failures, but Maya felt a familiar superiority surge through her. "You know," she said, "loud enough for passing staff to hear, at your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement? There are younger people who could actually use these jobs." Few housekeepers paused in their work, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Man Marcus, according to his name tag, simply nodded and returned to his windows. "Just saying," Maya continued, emboldened by what she interpreted as submission. "Maybe it's time to step aside for people with actual ambition." She walked away with a satisfied smirk, not noticing how the other staff members watched Marcus's reaction with something approaching concern. Nor did she see how he continued his work with the same steady pace, seemingly unaffected by her words, though his jaw had tightened almost imperceptibly. That evening, Maya video called her best friend back in Manhattan, desperate to vent about her surreal day. "It's like a social experiment in how the other half lives," she complained, propping her phone against a stack of resort brochures. "I'm surrounded by people with no education, no ambition, just content to spend their lives changing sheets and mopping floors." As she spoke, she didn't notice the figure walking past her cabin window, the same maintenance worker she'd mocked earlier, now carrying what looked suspiciously like architectural blueprints under his arm. Storms and Revelations 3, weeks into her internship, Maya had settled into a routine of minimal effort and maximum complaint. She'd mastered the art of looking busy while accomplishing little, delegating her more difficult tasks to eager interns, like James, who seemed inexplicably committed to actually learning. The weather had been perfect, endless blue skies and gentle ocean. Breezes that made the resort feel like a postcard come to life, that changed on a Tuesday morning when Maya woke to the sound of wind, howling against her cabin walls like a living thing. Through her small window, she could see palm trees bending at impossible angles, their fronds whipping frantically in the gray dawn light. The ocean, usually a serene turquoise, had transformed into a churning mass of white-capped waves that crashed against the cliffs with frightening intensity. "Attention all staff," crackled the intercom system. "Tropical storm Helena has intensified unexpectedly. All departments report to emergency stations immediately." "This is not a drill," Maya groaned, pulling her covers over her head. A storm meant extra work, probably wet floors to mop and nervous guests to coddle. She'd let the others handle the drama while she found somewhere comfortable to wait it out. But when she finally emerged from her cabin an hour later, the scene that greeted her was nothing like the minor inconvenience she'd imagined. Staff members rushed between buildings, their rain gear whipping in the wind as they secured outdoor furniture and checked emergency supplies. The usual calm efficiency of the resort had transformed into something more urgent, more vital. Isabella Torres, the guest relations manager, nearly collided with Maya as she hurried past carrying armloads of battery-powered radios. "Maya, thank God," Isabella panted, her usually perfect hair plastered to her head by rain. "We need all hands. Storm's gotten worse. Category 2 now, possibly 3 by afternoon. We're moving all guests to the main building." "Surely that's..." "Not my," Maya began, but Isabella was already gone, swept away by the crisis like everyone else. The main lobby had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Guests huddled in small groups, some looking annoyed at the disruption to their vacation, others genuinely frightened by the storm's intensity. Children cried as parents tried to maintain calm, while elderly guests sat in wheelchairs looking confused and vulnerable. Maya watched the controlled chaos with detachment, until she spotted a familiar figure moving through the crowd with quiet authority. Marcus, the maintenance worker she'd dismissed so cruelly, was directing staff with calm precision, his voice somehow audible above the wind and commotion. "Eastern wing windows need additional boarding," he told a group of maintenance workers. "Use the 3/4-inch plywood, not the 1/2 inch. And check the generator fuel levels, we might lose main power." Something in his tone made the other workers listen without question, moving quickly to implement his instructions. Maya frowned. Why were they taking orders from a janitor? Sophia Delacroix appeared at her elbow, rain dripping from her usually immaculate uniform. "I need you to help with the families in the East Corridor. Dr. Foster is setting up a medical station. Some guests need medication. Others are having panic attacks. Reluctantly, Maya followed Sophia to where Dr. Amanda Foster, the resort's on-call physician, had established a triage area using lobby furniture and medical supplies. An elderly woman sat trembling in a chair, her husband's arm around her shoulders, as Dr. Foster checked her blood pressure. The storms brought on her anxiety, the husband explained. She survived Hurricane Katrina storms trigger her PTSD. Dr. Foster nodded compassionately, her movements gentle and reassuring. We'll get her something to help with the anxiety, and I want to keep an eye on her throughout the day. Maya found herself genuinely moved by the woman's distress. For the first time since arriving at the resort, she felt a flicker of something. Beyond her own discomfort, actual concern for another person's well-being, she knelt beside the chair, offering the woman a bottle of water with uncharacteristic gentleness. It's going to be okay, she heard herself saying. The building is solid, and everyone here knows what they're doing. The woman squeezed her hand, gratefully, and Maya felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. The afternoon brought the storm's full fury. Windows shook in their frames, and the lights flickered intermittently as wind gusts reached nearly 100 miles per hour. The resort's backup generators hummed steadily, providing power for essential systems. But everyone knew they were at nature's mercy. It was during the worst of it that Maya witnessed something that would change her perception forever. A section of the resort's decorative fencing had broken loose, creating a dangerous projectile that threatened the main building's windows. Without hesitation, Marcus organized a team to secure it. Leading them into the storm's teeth with steady determination, Maya watched from the lobby windows as he coordinated the effort. His movements sure and confident despite the chaos around him. He seemed to anticipate problems before they occurred, positioning his team strategically and making split-second decisions that kept everyone safe. This wasn't the slow, methodical janitor she'd mocked. This was someone who understood crisis management at a fundamental level. He's something else, isn't he? Said James, appearing beside her at the window. Who? Maya asked, though she knew exactly who he meant. Marcus. I've been watching him all day. It's like he built this place himself. He knows every structural weakness, every system, every protocol. The other staff looked to him for guidance, not Victoria or the department heads. Maya studied the man more carefully. James was right, there was something different about the way Marcus moved through the crisis. The deference others showed him, the natural authority he wielded without seeming to try. As evening approached and the storm finally began to weaken, Maya found herself exhausted but oddly exhilarated. She'd spent the day actually helping comforting frightened guests, assisting Dr. Foster, even helping to prepare meals in the emergency kitchen. Her designer clothes were wrinkled and stained, her manicure ruined, but for once she didn't care. She was helping to distribute blankets when she overheard a conversation between two senior staff members. Thank God Marcus was here, one whispered. Remember the flood 3 years ago? He saved this place then too. Once he has such a feel for the resort's vulnerabilities, the other replied. Almost like he designed the emergency protocols himself. Maya's blood ran cold as the implications hit her. She thought about the architectural blueprints she'd glimpsed, the way other staff deferred to him, his uncanny knowledge of resort operations. A terrible suspicion began to form in her mind, growing stronger with each remembered detail. That night, as the storm finally passed and stars appeared between the breaking clouds, Maya lay awake in her cabin thinking about the man she'd so callously dismissed. Tomorrow would bring cleanup and recovery, but it would also bring questions she wasn't sure she was ready to have answered. Truth unveiled, the resort buzzed with cleanup activity for the next 3 days. Maintenance crews worked around the clock repairing storm damage, while housekeeping and guest services focused on returning operations to normal. Maya threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including herself. She found genuine satisfaction in helping restore the beauty that had been temporarily marred by nature's fury. But her newfound work ethic couldn't quiet the questions that plagued her thoughts. She found herself watching Marcus whenever their paths crossed, noting details she'd previously missed. The way younger staff sought his advice on technical problems. How he seemed to know the resort's history and operational quirks better than managers who'd worked there for years. The deference in people's voices when they spoke to him, despite his humble uniform and title. On Friday morning, an unexpected announcement crackled through the staff communication system. Mandatory all staff. Meeting in the main conference room at 2 p.m. Attendance is required for all employees and interns. Thank you. Victoria Blackwood's voice carried an unusual tension that made Maya's stomach clench with apprehension. Mandatory meetings were rare at the resort, usually reserved for major policy changes or serious incidents. The storm recovery was going well, so what could warrant gathering the entire staff? The conference room was packed beyond capacity when Maya arrived, having spent an unusually long time choosing her outfit. She'd settled on a conservative blouse and skirt, professional, but not ostentatious, appropriate for whatever news awaited them. She found a seat near the back, next to James and several other interns, who looked equally puzzled. Victoria stood at the front of the room, her usual composure cracked by what looked like nervous energy. Beside her sat Thomas Wright, whom Maya recognized as a member of the resort's board of directors. His presence made her pulse quicken. Board members didn't attend routine staff meetings. "Thank you all for coming," Victoria began, her voice carrying across the packed room. "As you know, we've just weathered a significant storm. I'm proud to say that every single one of you rose to the occasion. Your professionalism and dedication ensured the safety of our guests and the protection of our property." Polite applause rippled through the room, but Maya sensed an undercurrent of anticipation. This wasn't why they'd been summoned. Victoria exchanged a meaningful look with Thomas before continuing. "However, today's meeting isn't about the storm. It's about something far more significant. For the past month, we've had a very special visitor among us, someone who's been observing our operations, our culture, and most importantly, our character." Maya's blood turned to ice water. Around the room, she could see staff members shifting uncomfortably, similar realizations dawning on their faces. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria said, her voice growing stronger, "I'd like you to meet the founder and CEO of Ocean View Resorts International, Mr. Marcus Rivera." The door at the side of the room opened, and Maya's world tilted on its axis. The man who entered bore a little resemblance to the humble maintenance worker she'd mocked and dismissed. Gone were the worn coveralls and work boots, replaced by an impeccably tailored charcoal suit and Italian leather shoes. His silver-threaded hair was perfectly styled, and his posture radiated the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, but it was unmistakably him. The same dark eyes that had looked at her with patient tolerance when she'd suggested he retire. It's the same steady hands that had guided the resort through the storm with masterful competence. Marcus Rivera. Not Marcus, the janitor Marcus Rivera, whose name graced the resort's corporate materials, whose vision had created this empire of luxury hospitality. Maya felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. "For the past 15 years, Marcus said, his voice carrying easily through the stunned silence, "I've made it a practice to spend time at each of our properties in disguise. Not to spy or entrap, but to understand the true heart of our organization. To see how we treat each other when we think no one important is watching." His gaze swept the room, touching briefly on faces Maya recognized: Sophia, who looked proud rather than surprised; Isabella, whose eyes shone with vindication; Dr. Foster, who nodded approvingly. These people had known, Maya realized, or at least suspected. "What I've observed over the past month has been largely encouraging," Marcus continued. "I've seen dedication, compassion, and genuine care for our guests' well-being. During the storm, I witnessed teamwork and selflessness that made me proud to be associated with this organization." Maya's hands trembled in her lap. She knew what was coming. Feel the weight of his attention settling on her like a physical presence. "However," Marcus said, his tone growing more serious, "I've also observed behaviors that concern me deeply. Attitudes that have no place in an organization built on respect and service excellence." The silence in the room was deafening. Could hear her own heartbeat, thunderous in her ears, as shame and horror washed over her in waves. Every cruel word she'd spoken, every dismissive gesture, every moment of arrogance played back in her mind with crystal clarity. To those individuals, Marcus continued, I offer a choice. You can use this revelation as a catalyst for genuine growth and change, or you can leave with a neutral reference and the understanding that your future lies elsewhere. Maya wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor and emerge somewhere far from this room, this moment, this crushing weight of consequence. But escape was impossible. She was trapped by her own actions, forced to confront the reality of who she'd been and what she'd done. As the meeting concluded and staff members began filing out, Maya remained frozen in her chair. Some cast sympathetic glances her way, while others avoided eye contact entirely. James squeezed her shoulder gently before leaving, a gesture of friendship she felt utterly unworthy of receiving. Finally, only a handful of people remained in the room: Victoria, Thomas, Marcus, and Maya herself. The silence stretched until Marcus spoke, his voice neither harsh nor gentle, simply matter of fact. Miss Chen, would you please stay? Oh, we need to talk. New beginnings. Maya remained seated as the others filed out, leaving her alone with Marcus in the vast conference room. The silence stretched between them like a chasm she didn't know how to cross. She kept her eyes fixed on her hands, unable to meet his gaze, shame burning in her chest like acid. Look at me, Maya, Marcus said quietly. It took every ounce of courage she possessed to raise her head. His expression was unreadable, not angry exactly, but deeply disappointed in a way that cut far deeper than rage would have. Do you know why I started these visits 15 years ago? He asked, settling into the chair across from her. Maya shook her head, not trusting her voice. My first resort failed, Marcus continued. Beautiful property, excellent location, but it collapsed within 2 years because I'd created a toxic culture from the top down. I was young, arrogant, convinced that success meant surrounding myself with people who would never challenge me. The staff treated each other terribly, guests felt the negativity, and eventually everything fell apart. He leaned back, his eyes distant with memory. I lost everything: my investment, my reputation, my confidence. But in rebuilding, I learned something crucial. Genuine hospitality can only exist in an environment of mutual respect. When staff feel valued and dignified, they naturally extend that same care to guests. Maya's throat felt raw. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so deeply sorry for what I said, how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, there isn't, Marcus agreed. But apologies are just words. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Over the next hour, they talked with painful honesty. Maya found herself revealing things she'd never spoken aloud. Her fear of never living up to her father's legacy. Her sense of worthlessness despite her privilege, her use of cruelty as armor against her own insecurities. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that pushed her to examine her motivations more deeply. If you choose to stay, he finally said, it won't be easy. You'll start over completely new department assignments, closer supervision and zero tolerance for the attitudes you've displayed. Lena Vasquez, our head of guest experience training, will be your direct mentor. She's helped transform other people who've struggled with these issues. Maya nodded eagerly. Yes, please. I want to stay. I want to change. And if I'm honest, Marcus continued, part of me hopes you do change. During the storm, I saw glimpses of who you could become. The way you comforted Mrs. Henderson during her panic attack. How you worked alongside the kitchen staff without complaint. That person is worth fighting for. The next 8 weeks tested every assumption Maya had ever held about herself. Under Elena's patient but demanding guidance, she rotated through departments with genuine commitment to learning. She scrubbed floors until her knees bled, served demanding guests with forced smiles that gradually became real, and slowly earned back the respect of colleagues she'd once dismissed. Elena, a woman in her 60s who'd risen from housekeeping to become the resort's most respected trainer, became both mentor and surrogate mother. She pushed Maya relentlessly but fairly, celebrating small victories while never letting her slide back into old patterns. Respect isn't something you demand, Elena told her one evening as they reviewed the day's challenges. Something you earn through consistent actions over time. Maya began seeking out Roberto Santos, an older groundskeeper who'd been with the resort since its opening. She'd initially approached him to apologize for her past dismissiveness, but found herself drawn to his quiet wisdom and deep knowledge of the property's ecosystem. He taught her about the native plants, the careful balance required to maintain the resort's beauty while protecting the environment. "Every living thing has its purpose," Roberto said one afternoon as they worked together in the herb garden. "Even the weeds teach us something about resilience." As the weeks passed, Maya noticed Marcus watching her progress with what seemed like cautious approval. Their interactions remained professional, but gradually warmed. He would occasionally join her during meal breaks, their conversations evolving from work-related topics to deeper discussions about leadership, responsibility, and the true meaning of service. "You're not the same person who arrived here 3 months ago," he observed one evening as they walked along the clifftop path. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "No," Maya agreed. "I'm not sure who I am anymore, actually. Everything I thought I wanted, the corner office, the power, the deference, none of it seems important now." "That's not necessarily a bad thing," Marcus said. "The best leaders I know went through periods of questioning everything they thought. They believed." As her internship neared its end, Maya faced a choice she'd never anticipated. Her father had called repeatedly, expecting her to return to San Francisco and take her predetermined place in his company. But the person who would walk back into that world was fundamentally different from the one who'd left. On her final evening, Marcus invited her to dinner at the resort's most exclusive restaurant, not as CEO and intern, but as two people who'd found an unexpected connection through adversity. They talked late into the night about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing with an ease that surprised them both. "I have an offer for you," Marcus said, as the evening wound down. "It's not about your father's influence or your family's wealth. It's about the person you've become and the potential I see in you." He explained about a new property the company was developing, an eco-resort in Costa Rica that would focus on sustainable tourism and community development. They needed someone to help design the cultural integration programs, someone who understood both privilege and humility. It would mean starting at the bottom again, he warned, living in a small town, working directly with local communities, earning trust through action rather than title. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes, not of sadness, but of recognition. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it, a chance to build something meaningful, to use her advantages in service of something larger than herself. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." 6 months later, Maya stood in a small village outside San Jose, wearing work clothes and a sun hat, her hands dirty from helping to build a school. The local children had initially been shy around the American woman, but her genuine warmth and willingness to learn their language had gradually won them over. Marcus visited monthly to check on the project's progress. Maya found herself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that had nothing to do with business. Their relationship had deepened into something neither had expected, but both treasured a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of deep connection that transcends superficial differences. "Happy?" he asked one evening. As they watched the sunset from the village square, Maya considered the question seriously. Her manicure was perpetually ruined, her designer wardrobe replaced by practical clothes, her social media filled with pictures of children and conservation projects rather than luxury and excess. By her old standards, she should have been miserable. "Happier than I've ever been," she said, and meant it completely. The girl who had mocked a janitor for his age and station was gone forever, placed by a woman who understood that true worth had nothing to do with titles or bank accounts, and everything to do with how you treated the world around you. In losing her old self, Maya had found something far more valuable, a life of genuine purpose and authentic love.